Hi, first grade. So after we read a story, something that makes us good readers is creating a story map, because when we create a story map, it helps us understand the story a little bit better. So one of our assignments this week is to create a story map about the two books that we're reading. The first book is called Splat the Cat, and that's what we're going to work on together today. So after listening to the story and reading the story Splat the Cat, we're going to talk about it and we're going to create a story map together. So the first thing on our worksheet for our story map is the book title, which just means what's the title of the book? What's the book called? Well, the book we're talking about is Splat the Cat. So right here, I'm going to write Splat the Cat. Now, the characters in the story are the people who the story was about, the people that were inside of the story. So the main character is going to be the number one, the most important character in that story. So the main character in our story was Splat the Cat, so it was Splat. Now the setting of the story is talking about where does the story take place. So was the setting in a house? Was the setting outside in the park? Was the setting in a school? So we know that in the story Splat the Cat, well, there's a couple of places where it takes place. So Splat the Cat. So Splat, he starts off at home when he's getting ready for school. But the main part of the story takes place at the cat school. So for setting, I'm going to write cat school. Now, one thing we do in a story map is we retell the story. Retelling the story means we're going to tell the story in our own words. Because when we tell the story again in our own words, it helps us connect with the characters and the setting, and it helps us remember what happened so that we become better readers. So when we're retelling a story, we need to talk about the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. The beginning of the story is what happens first in the story. It's the start of the story. Then the middle is what happens next. Then the end is what happens at the end of the story. So let's start with the beginning of Splat the Cat, and let's think about what happened at the beginning. Well, Splat was in bed and his tail was wiggling because he was so nervous about going to cat school. And his mom had to come in and tell him it was time to get ready, and he was trying to think of all the reasons why he shouldn't go to school today. Maybe he should go tomorrow instead. So at the beginning of this story, Splat is getting ready for school, for cat school. And one important detail is that it was his first day at cat school, and that's why he was so nervous. So under the beginning section, I'm going to say Splat was getting ready for his first day of cat school. Okay. Splat was getting ready for his first day of cat school. So that's how our story starts. That's the beginning of our story. Then we move on to the middle part of the story. So what happened next? Well, there's a couple of things that happened. So Splat got to school, and he was learning about all of the different things that make cats so wonderful, such as chasing mice. But if we remember, one of the details from her story is that Splat had a pet mouse, Seymour, who he stuffed in his lunchbox because he was so nervous he thought he might need a friend at school. So in the middle of our story, he's learning at cat school that cats are supposed to chase mice. So at lunchtime, his mouse Seymour gets out of his lunchbox, and all of the cat friends at the school start chasing the mouse. And then there's a little bit of chaos, and later Seymour actually saves the day, because when it's time for milk snack, their cupboard is broken, and Seymour actually goes in and opens the cupboard so they can get milk, so he saves the day. So that's kind of a lot of information. So let's think of a way that we can make it a little smaller and retell it in our own words and write it for the middle of the story. So we can say, Splat learns about cats, because he learns about all the different things that make cats wonderful. So I'm going to just make it a little, from a big sentence to a small sentence. So I'm going to say, Splat learns about cats at school. And then another important detail about the middle of our story is that his mouse, Seymour, gets out of his lunchbox, and the cats start chasing him. And then Seymour ends up helping save the day because he's able to open the cupboard where their milk is. So how can we make that big sentence into something small that we can write? Well, let's read what we have so far. Splat learns about cats at school. His mouse helps save the day. I'm going to write that. So we've got the beginning, or the start of our story. Then we wrote about what happens in the middle of the story. Now we need to retell the end of our story. So this is what happens at the very end. Or what's the lesson that he learns at the end? Well, let's think about what happened. So he learns about cats. He learns that cats are supposed to chase mice. But then after the mouse helps save the day, the teacher changes one of the things they learned about on the board, and instead of saying cats chase mice, she adds cats don't chase mice. So he ended up learning that it was okay that he had a pet mouse, and that it's okay that he doesn't need to chase him. And not only that, but all of Splat's new cat friends at school decided that they were happy with that new rule, and they didn't want to chase mice anymore. So at the end, if you remember, he goes home, his mom picks him up, and he's so excited about everything he learned at school and his new friends that he's excited to tell his mom when he's riding his bike home. Then at the very end, it ends with the next morning when Splat wakes up and his tail is wagging again. But this time, instead of wiggling because he's nervous, it's wiggling because he's excited. So that's a lot of information again. Let's think how we can make it into a smaller sentence. I think I'll write, for the end of the story, Splat is excited to go to cat school again. So right over here, Splat is excited and looking forward to going back to cat school. Okay, so I wrote, Splat is excited and looking forward to going back to school. So, now that we've retold our story from the beginning, the middle, and the end, it helps us become better readers because we had to try to remember those details from the story, and we were able to connect with the story a little bit better. So, this is how you're going to complete your story map. And we've got 2 story maps this week. We've got Splat the Cat, and then we have the second story that you're reading. So, for that assignment, I want you to listen to the book, and you can read along. And then when it's done, I want you to complete the story map. So remember, we're going to write the book title. What's the book called? What's the title of the book? Who's the main character? So there might be a few characters in the story that help tell the story, but who's the main character? Who's the number 1 character that it's mostly about, or who's mostly talking in the story? What's the setting? So where does the story take place? And then you're going to retell the story in your own words. So you're going to think about the beginning, what happens at the start, what happens next in the middle of the story, and then what happens at the end when everything's all over. How does the story end? All right, enjoy your reading.